I saw what you did, and you're gonna pay for
Black
this!
CEO's daughter
Get out of my way
Airline
right now!
loses
You have no
control
idea what
minutes
you
later.
started! You're
Hello
hurt.
everyone, before
We
we
need to help
begin
you now.
today's video, I need your help.
I know what I'm doing. Stay back.
We've noticed that the channel is losing
There's someone on here who needs
traction,
to speak to you.
and
It's important.
subscribing
Respond to
is
the
one of the
captain.
best
Impossible.
ways you
It's
can
not.
help
Look at
us.
her.
You need to stop this right
It's
now.
quick,
We can't
free,
let her
and
through.
allows
I won't
us to
stop. I won't
continue
stop.
bringing you great content.
You have to listen
Your
to me.
support
I know what I
means
saw. Move back!
everything.
She's right.
Let's keep
She's
this
right.
channel growing
Listen to her.
collectively.
I'll call him now.
Where are you watching from? Drop your
We'll be
city
here.
or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. You don't belong up here. The words ripped through the narrow aircraft entryway like a siren. Sharp. Public. Unapologetic. The flight attendant's finger hovered inches from the woman's face, shaking with authority she believed was absolute. Her jaw was clenched, her voice loud enough to bounce off the metal walls of the jet bridge. Every passenger within earshot heard it. Every passenger froze. The woman didn't shout back. She stood still in the aisle, her posture upright, her shoulders squared, not defiant, not submissive. Blood traced a thin, shocking line down from her temple dark against her skin, disappearing into the collar of her navy blazer. Fresh. Real. Still moving. In her hand, her phone was raised. Recording. The flight attendant didn't notice at first. She was too busy performing power blocking the path forward with her body angling her shoulders, wide claiming space like a gatekeeper. This section is restricted, she snapped. You need to move back. Now. Behind the woman, a small voice trembled. Mom, her daughter, stood one step down the ramp, backpack straps clenched tight in her fists. She was trying not to cry, trying to understand what rule she had broken without being told the rule. The woman glanced back just for a second. Not panic, not fear, just calculation. Then her eyes returned to the flight attendant. Still silent. The air felt charged, heavy, like everyone was holding their breath at the same time. A man 2 rows back shifted his weight and looked away. A couple near the door exchanged a glance but said nothing. Phones stayed in pockets. Eyes dropped to shoes. The flight attendant leaned in closer, her voice rising. I said you don't belong here. You're causing a disruption. A disruption. The word hung there absurd and cruel. The woman's phone captured everything, the pointing finger, the flushed face, the certainty. It captured the blood. It captured the moment power mistook silence for weakness. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to her. She finally spoke. Not loud. Not emotional. Please lower your voice, she said calmly.
The flight attendant scoffed.
Or what nothing else followed. No threat. No explanation. Just the hum of the aircraft behind them and the quiet understanding that something irreversible had already begun. The woman adjusted her grip on the phone, centered the frame, and waited. The silence didn't calm her. It irritated her. The flight attendant straightened as if the woman's composure were a personal challenge. She glanced once at the phone, then dismissed it entirely. Ma'am, she said sharply, turning the word into a warning. You need to step back. You're holding up boarding. Holding up boarding. The woman looked past her down the narrow corridor toward the aircraft door where passengers were already seated, buckled in, unaware of the moment unfolding just feet away. She could hear the soft chime from inside the cabin. Boarding music? Normalcy, continuing indifferent. I'm not holding anything up, the woman replied. Her voice was level, controlled, almost gentle. That only made it worse. The flight attendant laughed under her breath, a quick, humorless sound. This is a restricted area. First section. You can't just walk up here like you own the place. Like you own the place. The words landed harder than the finger pointing. Harder than the blood still tracing its slow path down her skin. Behind her, her daughter shifted. One small step backward. Then another. The girl's eyes darted to the surrounding faces, searching for something help maybe. Or permission to exist. The woman noticed. She always noticed. She angled her body slightly, just enough to place herself between her daughter and the flight attendant. Not aggressively. Not dramatically. Just instinct. A shield. A man in a gray jacket cleared his throat a few feet away as if he might say something. He didn't. A woman near the wall adjusted her purse strap and stared at the floor. Someone else pretended to check a message on their phone. No one stepped forward. The flight attendant turned and snapped her fingers toward the cabin entrance. "I need a supervisor up here." No. The call echoed down the jet bridge like a verdict. When the supervisor arrived, he didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask if anyone was hurt. He didn't look at the blood. He looked at the woman's clothes. Simple, tailored but quiet. No visible logo. No obvious markers that would demand respect. His eyes flicked once to the phone, then away. What seems to be the problem, he asked the flight attendant, already choosing a side. "She's refusing to comply," the attendant said immediately. "Wrong section. Causing a disturbance." The woman exhaled slowly through her nose. "I have a valid ticket," she said. "For both of us." The supervisor raised an eyebrow. "Then it shouldn't be a problem to move back while we sort this out." Sort this out. Later. Somewhere else. Away from sight. Her daughter's fingers tightened around her sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, barely audible, "are we in trouble?" The question cut through everything. The woman lowered her head just enough to meet her daughter's eyes. "No," she said quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong." She looked back up at the supervisor. "I'm not moving," she said. "Not until you check." The supervisor's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, please don't make this harder than it needs to be." There it was. The moment where dignity was framed as defiance. Where standing still became the offense. The woman lifted her phone a little higher. Perfected the angle. The flight attendant noticed now. Her expression flickered just for a second. Too late. Because the misjudgment had already been made. And everyone standing there was about to live with it. Policy arrived before empathy ever had a chance. The supervisor lifted his radio thumb, pressing down with practiced ease. "Gate support to jet bridge," he said, voice clipped professional. "We have a non-compliant passenger." Non-compliant. The word slid into the space between them, heavy with implication. It reframed everything, no longer a question of what happened, but of who needed to be controlled. The woman didn't react. She didn't flinch at the label or the way it traveled down the ramp, carried by static and authority. She simply stood where she was, her phone steady, her breathing slow. "I asked you to check the ticket," she said. "That's all. All." The supervisor shook his head slightly, as if disappointed. "Ma'am, this isn't how boarding works. You can't block access and demand special treatment." Special treatment. Her mouth tightened, not in anger but recognition. She had heard that phrase before. In banks. In hotels. In conference rooms where her name opened doors only after she had already been judged. Behind them, the boarding door remained open. Passengers inside began to sense the delay now. Heads turned. A murmur rippled through the cabin, curiosity replacing comfort. The flight attendant crossed her arms. "She's been warned," she said, multiple times. Warned about what standing, existing, refusing to disappear quietly, the woman glanced down at her daughter. The girl's chin trembled as she tried to be brave, eyes glossy but dry. She was learning something in real time about tone, about power, about how quickly adults could decide you were a problem. The woman felt it then. The shift. This was no longer about a seat or a section. It was about precedent. About whether compliance would be demanded simply because it could be. "I'm not blocking access," she said again, slower this time. "You are." The supervisor's eyes hardened. "If you don't step back immediately, we'll have to escalate." Escalate. Another clean word. Another sharp edge. A man near the wall finally spoke, his voice uncertain. I mean, she's not yelling. She's just asking the supervisor cut him off with a look. Sir, please remain out of this. And just like that, the door closed again, not physically but socially. The message was clear. Witnesses were welcome only if they stayed silent. The flight attendant leaned closer to the woman, lowering her voice, but not her intensity. You're making a scene in front of your child, she said. That's on you. That did it. Not outwardly, not visibly, but something settled inside the woman, cold, precise, immovable. She looked at the attendant, then at the supervisor. Then she tilted her phone slightly, ensuring their faces were fully in frame. You've used the word policy 4 times, she said calmly, and you haven't checked anything once. The supervisor opened his mouth, then closed it again. His jaw flexed. This is your final request, he said. Move back now. The jet bridge felt smaller suddenly, narrower, like a corridor closing in. The woman didn't raise her voice. She didn't move. Instead, she reached into her pocket, with her free hand pulled out her earbuds and placed one carefully into her ear. The supervisor frowned. What are you doing? She met his eyes for the first time since he arrived. Escalating, she said softly. And somewhere far above the noise of the jet bridge, a call connected. The call didn't change the room right away. Nothing dramatic happened. No alarms. No raised voices. Just the quiet click in her ear as the line connected and the subtle way the woman's posture shifted, less defensive, now more deliberate.
The supervisor noticed it. So, did the flight attendant?
They both misread it. Ma'am, the supervisor said sharply, you need to remove that earbud. This is an active situation. The woman didn't respond. She lowered her phone slightly, just enough to rest her arm, but the camera stayed on. Still recording. Still steady. Behind them, someone cleared their throat again. The same man from before. This time, he didn't stop himself. I saw her ticket, he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't shake either. When she scanned in, it went green. The words landed softly and then echoed. The flight attendant snapped her head around. Sir, this doesn't concern you. It kind of does, since we're all standing here. A ripple moved through the jet bridge. Not a wave, just a tremor. A few heads lifted. A few eyes shifted from the floor to the faces at the center of it all. The supervisor frowned. We're handling this. With respect, the man said you haven't handled anything yet. That was when a second voice joined in. Quieter. Younger. I was at the scanner too, a woman near the wall said.
She hesitated, then took a step forward.
Her boarding pass was valid. For first section. The flight attendant laughed sharp and dismissive. You must be mistaken. I'm not, the woman replied. I work in compliance. I know what green means.
Silence fell again.
Different this time. The supervisor shifted his weight. For the first time, his eyes flicked toward the woman's phone, not with annoyance, but calculation. The woman felt it, the subtle tilt in the balance. She spoke into her earbud, barely moving her lips. They've escalated without verification, she said quietly. Yes, Cess. Jet bridge. Gate V14. A pause. Her daughter tugged gently at her sleeve. Mom, she whispered, people are looking. I know, the woman murmured back. That's okay. The flight attendant took a step back, then caught herself and stepped forward again as if reclaiming ground. This is getting out of hand, she said. We're calling airport security. The supervisor nodded too quickly. Do it. The woman didn't react. She simply turned her body slightly, placing herself more fully between her daughter and the others. The movement was small, instinctive, but unmistakable. Protection. The man who had spoken first shook his head. "You're really doing this? This passenger has refused multiple instructions," the supervisor said, voice tight. "We have no choice." "No," the man replied. "You made a choice." The words hung there. The woman ended the call in her ear. Her phone buzzed once in her hand, confirmation, not surprise. She looked at the flight attendant, then at the supervisor. Then finally, she addressed the people watching. "Please remember," she said calmly, "what you saw first." No one spoke. No one moved. And somewhere down the corridor, footsteps began to approach, slow, deliberate, unavoidable. The witnesses didn't step back this time. They stepped closer. The jet bridge blurred at the edges. Not because the woman was dizzy, but because her mind had slipped backward, pulled by a familiar weight she had learned to carry quietly. She had stood in places like this before. Different airports. Different cities. Same tone. She remembered being 22, fresh out of school, standing at a hotel counter after a delayed flight. Her reservation was confirmed. Her card was valid. Still, the clerk had smiled thinly and said, "Are you sure you're in the right place?" She had stepped aside then. Told herself it wasn't worth the trouble. She remembered a bank lobby years later. A loan officer who kept saying policy while his eyes said suspicion. She remembered the heat in her face as people behind her watched the quiet calculation of whether dignity was worth delay. Every time the sentence changed slightly, but the meaning never did. "You don't belong." The woman's grip on her phone tightened, not from anger, but resolve. This time the words hadn't landed on her alone. They had landed on her child. Her daughter stood close now, shoulder brushing against her hip, as if proximity alone could make the moment safer. The girl's breathing was shallow. Controlled. Too controlled for someone her age. "Mom," she whispered, her voice small but steady. "Are they mad at us?" The woman knelt down, ignoring the stairs, the radios, the approaching footsteps. She brought herself level with her daughter's eyes. "No," she said softly. "They're confused? Did we break a rule? No? Then why are they talking like that?" The woman paused. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because she knew it too well. "Sometimes," she said carefully, "people decide things about you before they ask." Her daughter nodded, absorbing it quietly the way children do when they sense truth, but don't yet have language for it. The woman straightened slowly. Around them, the jet bridge felt tighter. More people had turned now. No one was pretending not to see anymore. The witnesses had grown bolder. Phones were out. Whispers had started to overlap. The flight attendant noticed the shift and bristled. "You're upsetting your child," she snapped. "This is unnecessary." The woman looked at her. What she wanted to say stayed unspoken. What's unnecessary is teaching a child that silence is the price of safety. Instead, she said nothing. She wiped the blood at her temple with the edge of her sleeve, slow, deliberate. The red smear remained visible enough to matter. Then, she lifted her phone again. Framed the moment. The supervisor's voice cut in. "Security is on the way." The woman nodded once, as if acknowledging a schedule she already knew. She glanced down at her daughter, placed a hand on her shoulder. Firm, reassuring.
"Stay right here," she said.
"No matter what happens." Her daughter nodded again, trusted her completely. That trust settled into the woman's chest like armor. Because this time, she wasn't choosing peace over truth. This time, she wasn't stepping aside. This time, the memory didn't end in retreat. It ended here, with witnesses watching, with a system about to expose itself, with a child who would remember not the fear, but the moment her mother stood still and refused to disappear. And as the footsteps grew louder, the woman inhaled once steady and deep. The past had followed her here, but it would not decide the ending. The footsteps stopped just short of them. Security hadn't arrived yet, but the promise of it had. The supervisor stood taller now, shoulders squared, voice steadier than before. Authority borrowed from what was coming, not what he held. We're going to resolve this, he said, rehearsed. But you need to cooperate. Cooperate. The woman nodded once, almost politely. Then she did something no one expected. She stepped aside. Just one step. Not backward. Not away. To the side. It opened the path. Boarding could continue now, at least physically. The jet bridge breathed again. The supervisor exhaled, mistaking movement for surrender. That's better, the flight attendant muttered. They were wrong. The woman raised her phone again, not toward them this time, but slightly downward, capturing the whole frame, her daughter, the witnesses, the uniforms, the blood still faintly visible at her hairline. She tapped her screen once. Then she spoke quietly into her earbud. It's time, she said. No names. No explanations. Activate the protocol. The supervisor frowned. Who are you talking to? She didn't answer him. The flight attendant scoffed. You think making calls is going to change policy? The woman's eyes lifted then. Calm. Unimpressed. It already has, she said. A pause. Her phone buzzed short, sharp. A confirmation. The kind that didn't ask questions. Around them, the witnesses felt it before they understood it. A shift, not in volume, but in gravity. The supervisor checked his watch. The flight attendant glanced toward the aircraft door, then back at the woman. You need to stop recording, the supervisor said, voice tighter now. This is an operational area. The woman smiled faintly. Not with humor, with certainty. This is a public accommodation, she replied. And you're on record. The supervisor opened his mouth, then closed it again. He reached for his radio, hesitated, then spoke. Control status on security static answered him. Then, a voice uncertain. They're delayed. Delayed. The flight attendant's confidence flickered. What do you mean, delayed? The woman took out her second earbud and placed it in her other ear, sealing herself into the call.
She listened for a moment.
Nodded once. Her daughter watched her closely now, not afraid, just curious.
Sensing a turn.
The woman leaned down. Remember what I told you? She said softly. Standing still doesn't mean you're weak. Her daughter nodded, eyes wide. The supervisor tried again. Ma'am, I need you to wait, the woman said gently. Not a request. A statement. She lifted her phone slightly higher. Perfect framing. Everyone in view. Then she went quiet. No speeches. No warnings. No reveals. Just silence, deliberate and unyielding. The kind that forces other people to fill it. The flight attendant shifted her weight. This is ridiculous, she whispered. Why isn't security here yet? Because something else was on the way. Something heavier than uniforms. The woman felt it before anyone else, the tightening in the air, the subtle change in rhythm. The moment systems begin to talk to each other behind the scenes. She didn't smile. She didn't move. She simply stood there between her child and a machine that had just been switched on. And for the first time since the words, "You don't belong," were spoken, the people who said them weren't sure who was in control anymore. The change didn't announce itself. It never does. It crept in quietly through a vibration, a glance, a pause that lasted half a second too long. The supervisor's radio crackled. Not with instructions. With confusion. He lifted it instinctively, thumb hovering, then pressed. Control, repeat last. A voice came back lower than before. Careful.
Stand by.
Stand by. The supervisor frowned. That wasn't protocol. He tried again. We have an unresolved situation on the jet bridge. Security was dispatched. Another pause. Longer this time. Security has been redirected, the voice finally said. Redirected. The flight attendant stiffened. Redirected where no answer came immediately. The woman watched them closely now, not with satisfaction, not with triumph, but with the focus of someone watching a system reveal its seams. Her phone buzzed again. 2 short vibrations. Then a third. She didn't check it. She didn't need to. The supervisor lowered his radio slowly, eyes narrowing as he looked at her, not at her clothes, not at the blood, not even at the phone. At her stillness. "Who did you call?" he asked. The woman met his gaze. Calm. Direct. "The people you answer to," she said. The words didn't land like a threat. They landed like a fact. Behind them, the cabin door opened slightly. A flight attendant inside leaned out, whispering urgently to another crew member. Boarding had stopped completely now. Passengers were standing in the aisle, craning their necks. Phones were fully out. No one was pretending anymore. The witnesses had multiplied. The man in the gray jacket stepped closer. "Looks like you might want to actually check that ticket now." The supervisor ignored him. His jaw tightened. "Ma'am, if you are interfering with operations, you already said that," the woman replied evenly. 3 times. She shifted her weight slightly, grounding herself. Her daughter mirrored the movement without realizing it. The flight attendant scoffed, but her voice lacked conviction now. "This is absurd. She thinks she's untouchable." The woman glanced at her, not sharply, not angrily. "Not untouchable," she said. Countable?" The radio crackled again. This time, the voice on the other end didn't sound unsure. "Supervisor, it said we need you to pause all action. Corporate has requested no further escalation." Corporate. The word sucked the air out of the jet bridge. The supervisor's face drained of color. "Corporate," who another pause. "Then you'll be receiving a call." As if on cue, the supervisor's phone rang. He looked at the screen. Froze. The flight attendant leaned in, whispering urgently. "What is it?" He didn't answer her. He stepped a few feet away, turning his back as he took the call. His posture changed immediately, shoulders rounding, voice dropping. "Yes, sir. Yes, I understand." The woman waited. So did everyone else. The supervisor ended the call slowly. When he turned back around, his expression was no longer authoritative. It was cautious. Measured. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said, choosing the word carefully this time. "There appears to have been a miscommunication." The woman tilted her head slightly. "You didn't check," she said. There was no communication. Silence followed. The flight attendant opened her mouth to speak, then stopped herself. Because for the first time since this began, she understood something fundamental had shifted, and she had no idea how far. The woman reached up and removed one earbud.
Then the other. She held them loosely in her hand, eyes steady, voice calm.
"Now," she said, "we can talk." And in that moment, before any names were spoken, before any titles were revealed, the people who had tried to move her realized they could no longer move anything at all. The supervisor cleared his throat again, a small sound that carried far in the quiet jet bridge. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "for the record, may I have your name?" It was the first question he should have asked. The woman didn't answer right away. She looked down at her daughter instead, smoothed a hand over her hair, grounded her. Then she looked back up. "My name isn't the issue," she said. "Your behavior is..." The supervisor swallowed. "Corporate needs confirmation." She nodded once, reached into her pocket. Not for an ID. Not for a boarding pass. For her phone. She tapped the screen, then turned it toward him, not theatrically, not triumphantly. Just enough for him to see. His eyes scanned the display. And then they stopped moving. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost imperceptible, like watching a tide pull back before a wave hits. He looked up at her, then back at the screen, then at the flight attendant. "You didn't say," he began, then stopped himself. The woman lowered the phone. "You didn't ask," she said evenly. The flight attendant laughed nervously. "This doesn't mean anything," she said. "People fake things all the time." The supervisor didn't look at her, because his phone rang again. He answered it without stepping away this time. "Yes," he said quietly. "I understand." He listened, nodded. Once. Twice. Then he ended the call. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Not softer.
Smaller.
Ma'am, he said, I need to formally apologize. The word hung there. Apologize. The flight attendant stared at him. For what? She snapped. She refused instructions. She was verified. The supervisor cut in sharp now. From the beginning, silence crashed down. The woman finally spoke not to them, but to the space itself. To the witnesses. To the system that had failed loudly and publicly. You told my daughter she didn't belong, she said calmly. On an airline where I sit on the board. The sentence didn't echo. It didn't need to. The effect was immediate. The flight attendant's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's not possible. The woman met her eyes. It is, she said. And it's documented. Around them, phones rose higher. Gasps moved through the crowd like a current. The man in the gray jacket let out a slow breath.
Someone whispered, "Oh my God."
The supervisor straightened, finally understanding the scale of what had happened. This incident is now under internal review, he said. Effective immediately. The flight attendant took a step back. You can't just, I can, the woman interrupted gently. And I will. She glanced down at her daughter. Did you hear that? She asked softly. Her daughter nodded, a small smile breaking through the tension for the first time. The woman looked back up at the crew. This wasn't about a seat, she said. It was about who you thought you could push. She slipped her phone back into her pocket. And you chose wrong. The jet bridge remained silent, but everything had already changed. The silence after the reveal wasn't empty. It was heavy loaded with consequences no one could take back. The flight attendant stood frozen arms slightly away from her sides as if unsure where to put them now that authority had abandoned her. Her face cycled through disbelief, denial, then something closer to fear. I didn't know, she said quickly. Too quickly. If I had known, that's the problem, the woman replied. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight now. You only see people once you think they matter. The supervisor looked down at his radio, then at the floor. This incident has triggered an automatic escalation, he said. Access, logs, body cams, boarding records, everything is being reviewed in real time. The word everything landed like a door slamming shut. The woman didn't nod, didn't smile. She simply listened. A new voice crackled through the supervisor's radio, clear, unmistakable. Supervisor, you are instructed to relieve the attending crew member from duty immediately. The flight attendant's head snapped up. What the supervisor hesitated just a fraction of a second, then turned to her. You're being removed from this flight, he said quietly. Please step aside. This is ridiculous, she snapped, backing away. She provoked this. She recorded me. She stood still, the woman said. You pushed. That was it. The line no one could cross back over. The flight attendant's shoulders sagged as security finally appeared at the far end of the jet bridge, not rushing, not aggressive. Controlled. Purposeful. They didn't look at the woman or her daughter. They looked at the crew member. The witnesses didn't move aside this time. They watched. Phones up. Eyes steady. The supervisor addressed the crowd, now voice formal practice. We apologize for the delay. Boarding will resume shortly. No one clapped. No one cheered. This wasn't entertainment. This was correction. The woman knelt beside her daughter again. You okay? She asked softly. Her daughter nodded. You didn't yell, she said, almost surprised. The woman smiled just a little. You don't have to yell to be heard. The supervisor approached again, slower now. Ma'am, he said we'd like to offer you and your daughter priority boarding and no, the woman interrupted gently. He stopped. We'll board when it's time, she said. like everyone else. The supervisor nodded, chastened. As the flight attendant was escorted away, she turned once, looking not angry now, but small. Human again. Too late. The woman didn't look back. She looked forward to the aircraft door to her daughter, to a standard that had just been enforced without a single raised voice. The system had collapsed in on itself, and in its place stood something quieter, stronger, final. Boarding resumed without ceremony. No announcements. No apologies broadcast over the intercom. Just the quiet shuffle of people moving again, as if the machine had been paused and restarted mid-breath. The jet bridge felt different now. Not lighter, but honest. The woman waited until the line thinned, until the noise softened. She didn't move when a crew member gestured for her to go ahead. She stayed where she was, one hand resting gently on her daughter's shoulder. They would board when it was their turn. Nothing more. Nothing less. Around them, the witnesses dispersed slowly. Some offered small nods as they passed. A few whispered words, "I'm glad you said something." One woman caught her eye and mouthed, "Thank you." The woman acknowledged them with a quiet look. No smile. No performance. Inside, the cabin seats waited. Overhead bins. The familiar hum of air systems settling back into rhythm. Normal again on the surface. As they stepped onto the aircraft at last, the woman felt her daughter's grip loosen slightly. The girl exhaled long and careful, as if she had been holding her breath the entire time. "Mom?" she asked. "Yes. Are they going to do that again?" The woman paused before answering. She crouched to her daughter's level, steady and present. "They might try," she said honestly. "Somewhere else. To someone else." Her daughter frowned. "Then we do what we did today," the woman replied. "We stay still. We tell the truth. And we don't disappear." The girl considered that, then nodded. They reached their seats, settled in, buckled up. Outside the window, the ground crew moved with mechanical precision, unaware or perhaps simply unaffected by what had shifted inside the jet bridge minutes earlier. The woman closed her eyes for a moment, not to rest, to mark it. She didn't think about the boardroom waiting on the other end of the flight, or the emails already stacking up, or the formal reports that would follow. She thought about the standard, the one her daughter had just seen enforced not with anger, not with noise, but with presence. When she opened her eyes, the cabin lights dimmed slightly. The plane prepared to push back. Somewhere behind them, an incident report was being written. Names logged. Language transcribed. Footage reviewed. But here in this quiet seat, the lesson had already landed. She hadn't raised her voice. She had raised the standard, and her daughter had watched every second of it. The plane lifted smoothly, almost indifferently, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. From the window, the city lights blurred into lines, then vanished beneath the clouds. Inside the cabin, conversations returned to normal volume. Laptops opened. Drinks were served. Life moved on. But the woman didn't. She sat upright, hands folded loosely in her lap, eyes forward, not watching the screen in front of her, not scrolling through messages. She was listening to the quiet aftermath inside herself. Across the aisle, someone leaned over and whispered, "You handled that with so much grace." The woman acknowledged it with a small nod. Nothing more. Grace was just discipline practiced long enough to look effortless. Her daughter leaned against her shoulder, now exhaustion finally winning. The tension had drained out of her small body, replaced by trust complete and unspoken. That mattered more than anything else. The woman reached for her phone at last. Notifications filled the screen. Missed calls. Messages marked urgent. A system already responding to what had been exposed. She didn't open any of them. Not yet. Because the most important audience was already here. She turned slightly, brushing her lips against her daughter's hair, and spoke softly, more to herself than anyone else. "I didn't raise my voice," she said. I raised the standard. The words weren't triumphant. They weren't bitter. They were final. Somewhere on the ground, procedures were being rewritten, training modules updated, careers quietly altered. But up here above it all, the lesson had already landed. Power didn't shout. Dignity didn't beg. And justice, real justice, didn't need an audience to be real. The woman closed her eyes as the seatbelt sign dimmed. This chapter was finished, and her daughter would never forget how it ended. The story didn't end when the plane landed. It never does. On the ground, the machinery of accountability was already in motion, quiet, methodical, irreversible. Reports were filed before the wheels touched the runway. Language was reviewed line by line. Footage was logged, backed up, time-stamped. Not for spectacle, for record. The woman felt none of it in real time. No buzz of victory. No rush of satisfaction. Just a steady calm, the kind that comes from knowing something was corrected before it could be explained away. As the aircraft taxied to the gate, her daughter stirred and looked up at her. "Mom," she said sleepily, "are we okay now?" The woman smiled softly. "We were always okay." They disembarked like everyone else. No escort. No priority lane. No special treatment offered again. And that was exactly the point. At the end of the jet bridge, a senior operations manager stood waiting, not blocking, not posturing. Just standing to the side, hands clasped, eyes careful. "Ma'am," he said respectfully on behalf of the airline. The woman raised a hand gently. Not to silence him. To redirect him. "Make sure this never happens again," she said. "To anyone." He nodded once. "It won't." She believed him not because of his tone, but because of what had already been set in motion behind it. As they walked through the terminal, the world resumed its pace. Announcements echoed. Luggage rolled. People hurried past without knowing what had shifted in a narrow corridor above the tarmac minutes earlier. But her daughter knew. That night, long after the noise of travel faded, the woman watched her sleep peaceful, unburdened. She thought about the moment on the jet bridge. The finger pointed. The words spoken. The decision not to move. She thought about the lesson that mattered most. That dignity isn't granted by uniforms or policies. That power doesn't need volume. That standing still, when done with purpose, can move entire systems. The woman turned off the light and let the room settle into quiet. Tomorrow, the world would continue as it always had, imperfect, uneven, unfinished. But one standard had been raised. And once raised, it doesn't come back down. Not for her. Not for her daughter. Not anymore.